Looks good. We can see.
Okay, great. So I was a little bit ambitious in my topic, but I'll go ahead and give a progress update. Um, so I'll be talking about running Chapel on the cloud. And the motivation for this is that Chapel is very nice for doing big data and engineering computations. But there may be industrial use cases where you have small and medium enterprises that don't want to run a cluster in-house, but may have some workstations and then may want to do some remote computing when they need uh, more memory or more CPU resources. Um, so um, one way to run Chapel would be, for example, to use containers. Um, Another way is to consider having Linux packages. And the reason for this is that you may not want to have a full IT department dedicated to keeping your IT infrastructure going. Um, so if you have an easy way to install Chapel and set up your development environment, um, this could be helpful for you. Um, and in my particular case, I'll focus on Fedora, GNU Linux, because that's what I've been using the most at the moment. Um, there are other Linux distributions. Some of the considerations may be slightly different for those. So this um, may like there's some suggestions I'll present, but they may need modifications in other scenarios. Um, So what's the idea behind Linux packaging? You have like a coherent environment where you can kind of develop your applications. There's easy installation and everything works together. So a lot of open source software is kind of developed separately and may not interoperate. So uh, solutions like SPAC try to help um, with this by kind of bundling your dependencies together for different applications, um, just because it might be very difficult to have all of them work together. Um, but if uh, these are kind of all coherently developed and tested for you, this can help in some cases. There is a drawback in that you might not get the best possible performance, um, but human time is also quite important. And I think these days, even if you're running on 100 cores or 1,000 cores, you might find that still the developer time is more expensive than the computation time. Um, so Fedora has kind of these packaging guidelines, which are kind of available online. They try to give kind of a coherent system of what you should have. Um, and they have a number of different programming languages, all of which kind of have guidelines for how they should be integrated into this. Um, you'll notice that there's many kind of new languages which are currently being developed that aren't here. Chapel is one of them. So the hope is to be able to kind of have maybe a section like this on Chapel um, that would help integrate apps that people have built um, and make distributing them easier. So some of the things that kind of impacted at least production is that um, shared libraries are preferred and names are useful. The reason for this is that if you have to do a build change in the library, then you don't have to rebuild all the dependencies. And the soname is helpful because that'll indicate if you have API changes. And so in those cases, one will rebuild anything that depends on it and run the test suites and check that they're okay. And if not, flag for somebody to update the things. RPads are not preferred, primarily because it can present a security hazard. Um, so you typically want to have things within the shared library path if possible. Dependency bundling is discouraged, primarily because uh, the shared testing of dependencies helps improve the resilience of the operating system and ensures that things are working correctly. So this helps catch bugs because different packages will test out different aspects of each of the dependencies they use. There's a single Python version, so there's no virtual environments. I mean, you can set these up for yourself when doing development, but that means you want to kind of have all the dependencies build and work together. When building stuff for each compiler, there's specific flags. So typically you want to have some debug info. Um, this is helpful when you have long-running applications. You want to figure out if they crash, why they crash. Um, and for some software such as Python, there's kind of reasonably good package man integration. So if you have something on pip and you package it within Fedora, um, they should behave the same and kind of work in the same way. So the idea is try and do that with other languages as well. Um, so Fedora is available on many clouds. And okay. So you get a bunch of different choices. And you can actually also launch it directly on a number of different public clouds. Um, I've mostly used AWS just because that's a bit easier for me to access, but you can also take the images and run them on other clouds that don't have images readily available. And just finished getting a base package in. This is in 44, which is kind of the current development release. You can kind of see how um, uh, you have kind of a file which determines how to build everything. So where you get the sources, the licensing conditions, what's required to build it, um, how you will configure a Chapel thing, and then how you install it. So this will differ for different Linux distributions, and some of the dependencies that are available also differ. Um, and typically, um, on each commit, you kind of get um, information about the build and the tests that have run. Um, and you can go through and see the build logs and things. Um, so, like you can see how it goes through and builds everything and gives the outputs. Tests that are run at the end. And how it's installed everything. Um, so um, this is kind of showing kind of login by SSH. You could set up
And,
kind of a graphical interface as well.
and Benson, just for the sake of time, do you think you could wrap up in like the next 2 minutes or so?
Sure.
Awesome.
Um,
Thank you.
so it'll go through and you ask it to install and it'll install for you. It's still a bit of a bug. So if I run chapel dash help, you'll see that I still need to get the libraries all set up and paths. So I don't have any performance information about this particular installation, but the RPMs distributed by the chapel team will run correctly. So it installs. We still need somewhat better dependencies and need a good way to launch and compile stuff. But hopefully, this gives you some idea that even though it's a bit painful to deal with Linux distribution packagers, it does give you better testing. Um, there are kind of examples for how to do good integrations, And this will enable kind of reproducible data science and engineering, not just for large companies or people with access to supercomputers, but also people on moderate size parallel platforms. So thanks for your attention. I'd like to thank Jade Abraham and Lydia Duncan, who have given lots of feedback on my packaging, and Ben Beasley, who's also reviewed a lot of the stuff on Fedora side. Thanks for your attention.